Hi, my name is Nikki Seward. It is May 18th, 2014, and this video is provided for the North Delta Cares and other individuals in the Delta who are interested in my focus of the Bay Delta Conservation Plan, specifically my review of the baselines used for the Bay Delta Conservation Plan, and I am very concerned, and my questions center around how they counted water flow in the past, how they are now, and in the future. I have already answered a different question regarding calcium 2, and which, I've asked the question, and you can see the videos. If you are interested, it kind of depends on who's counting on how much water flow there is and how much export there is. And that video series looks at the conflicts between formulas that were used by DWR and USGS, and which formula was used affects the outcome. So one formula is right, one formula is wrong. Which one was it? This video is going to be about the unaccounted water flow on the Sacramento River and outflow of the Delta. And this is something that other people have asked me about to do a video specifically on, so that is what this is going to be. I will be reporting or uploading the video to YouTube or some other place, and the documents will be at the snugharbor.net. You can go to my Water Wars page, and that's where a lot of the links are. I just wanted you to recognize the question I'm asking. Since DWR made mistakes in reporting Delta exports and Delta outflow in the 2013 California Water Plan, which reported exports of the last 15 and more years actually, and it indicated there was unaccounted for exports, isn't it logical to assume the Bay Delta Conservation Plan also used that same flow and export data, which, just like the 2013 California Water Plan chart, needs to be reviewed so the reported data can be corrected? You'll see what I'm talking about when we go through this video. So this is the unaccounted water flow video. So now I'm going to reduce that, and I want you to recognize I'm just going to be clicking on references in different areas. The Bay Delta Conservation Plan, Chapter 5, this is a figure from Chapter 5, and this is the Draft Environmental Impact Report, Environmental Impact Statement for the Bay Delta Conservation Plan. And this is one of the figures, and it talks about the water exports, and you will see that it goes all the way, it's page 2 of 36, and it goes all the way back to 1955, and it shows these exports. It stops really at about 2009, even though we are 2014. And you have to ask, first of all, why does it stop? Do they want to not acknowledge that so much more water was exported from the Delta while all this CalFed planning was going on and Bay Delta Conservation Plan was going on? They were experimenting here in the Delta. They've been sending out more waters in different way from the Delta, and I'm going to give you an example. So we're going to talk about why this chart's wrong, not just because they stop and don't report 2010, 11, 12, 13, but also that the water calculations this chart are based on are probably most likely wrong, and I'll show you how I came to that conclusion. I also wanted to show you this other one. I hope that you can see this on a large screen, because looking at this in a small screen will be a little bit hard for you to understand what I'm talking about. This is somebody else's chart. I'm going to enlarge it a little bit in case you are on a small screen. And I'm going to use a slider to help you to see what I'm talking about. This chart is from an organization called bay.org, and assets. They have all kinds of organizations take the water, the day flow water from CDEC of the California water website, water.ca.gov. Then you can put in search CEDC, and that'll take you the water flow reporting area where you can get information. Or people use the charts provided by DWR from time to time. So these are the water exports acknowledged by DWR and USBR according to this website. And I had asked, well, what's the historical average? CalSim used 4.3 million acre feet as a historical average. That's about down here. And then Bay Delta Conservation Plan used for its baseline 4.7 million acre feet. That's way up here. Look at history, and then look at what they're saying is the baseline. And then this is what's proposed average export with the tunnels. And notice that this one does cover further than the Bay Delta Conservation Plan chart. Look how much was exported in 2010, 2011. Now, we're 2014, and the news media keeps talking about the last 3 years of this terrible drought, and yet look how much they exported during what they call a terrible drought. So maybe it wasn't really a drought in 2010. Maybe it was a man-made Northern California drought because there was too much exports to the south. So notice how Bay Delta Conservation Plan figure does not show the last several years of exports. And now I want to go on to the real meat of this subject. I want you to note that here is another one of my PDFs that will show online. And it's a summary of several of the data gaps and unexplained water flow problems. But this one in particular, this looks at computer modeling for the Bay Delta Conservation Plan used in the flow data for CalSim, CalSim2, and DSM2. And these are schematics for DSM2. And I want to enlarge this in case you're on a small screen, so that maybe you can see this a little better. DSM2 is used as a computer model used. You can see where you can find it, baydeltaoffice.water.ca.gov. Sometimes these things move around, so you have, meaning they change the links. So if you go to water.ca.gov and in the search part say DSM2, you'll notice that you'll go to a web page that Mr. Paul Marshall, I think he's in charge of a lot of things related to all this water exports. I first met him when he was in charge of the plan to use some, oops, sorry, I went to a different graphic. Let me go back to that. Mr. Marshall was working on the in-delta storage, and now I believe he's working on a lot of other things too. I think his name is head of DSM2 now, but I might be mistaken. Last time I looked, I thought his name was there. Anyway, DSM2, it's a computer delta simulation model, second version. That's maybe what it means. I want you to notice new reservoir. Liberty Island is listed as a reservoir, not a restoration site or anything like what we've been told it is. And then these channels are all in the computer model, and the reason why they calculated or they did these channels is to look at water flow, water exports, salinity impacts, what happens when you increase flow on the Sacramento River, decrease flow on other rivers, what happens to salinity. And notice that there are a bunch of salinity monitoring stations. So this is map showing EC calibration locations related to DSM2, and you can see that they're really only focused in the South Delta. There is a monitoring station on Steamboat Slough. There's one on Sutter. These things were put in a long time ago, but I think the EC monitoring started in 2001 or something like that, related to CalFed. Have to go back and look at that history. There's monitoring stations in here in the yellow bypass Cache Slough area. But you can see that DSM-2 only modeled in this area, at least at the time frame in 2009, when the Bay Delta Conservation Plan documents were being developed. I just wanted you to see that North Delta has definitely been gone through the schematics, and then they recalibrated. This yellow line shows where they used, they looked at water depth, which was interesting because they call it this particular computer model a one-dimensional model, but they were looking at they checked the depth of the water levels along in here because they realized things had already changed from when they first did it. And so now I'm going to go on to the unaccounted for water chart. If you can see this is snugharbor.net and /DWR_reporting_of_inflow_and outflow HTML. This is from the snugharbor.net, and if you go to my Water Wars page, this will be one of the pages you can be linked to. And this isn't just about the unaccounted for diversions. I wanted to gather some of the other water flow pages, and you will see, I'm going to move this a little bit so I can, so you can see what I'm talking about. There's a whole bunch of documents from the Bay Delta Conservation Plan related to the same issue of water flow and exports, and you will find that over time how much was exported from the delta and where it's going is it changes. They keep changing how they report it. I think what's really important now is to note the water plan and how it very clearly talks about almost 7 million acre feet being exported in the future into the San Joaquin rivershed, that then puts more down into the Tulare and going on south. It is very striking. It's what they really plan to do, which pretty much would eliminate water on the Sacramento River or bring it down to at most 3,000 cubic feet per second that I can figure out. Anyway, note that I am not a water engineer. I'm definitely a researcher. I'm an attorney, but I'm not a water engineer. So what I'm providing is my personal opinion based on a great deal of research. And so I'm sharing this because people ask me to. This is part of my comments on the Bay Delta Conservation Plan. So what I asked a couple of months ago of some water engineers that are contractors or consultants for DWR, and I also brought it to the attention of some DWR personnel when there was discussions about water flow and salinity on Steamboat Slough. And I had been studying, trying to understand the water data chart is provided by the water plan. California does these water plans and these updates of what they did export and didn't export, and I'm sorry, it's somehow when I did the screen print of this particular chart, it just turned out a little bit fuzzy, but that this was the chart that was there. And I have several versions of that. And and I have to say, you'll at the end of this, you'll see how they changed it. But this chart gives the water portfolio inflow and outflow of the delta. That's what the purpose of it. And it goes from 1998 to 2010. And this chart tells us how much was Sacramento River inflow. I'm going to make it larger and hope that you can see it clear enough. Sacramento River inflow in 1998 was, and it's in 1,000 acre feet. So that's basically million acre feet. So I'm going to talk about, instead of saying 29,000 acre feet, I'm just going to say 29 million acre feet. You will see in 2002 it was 13 million. In 2000, it was 18 million, and the gauges report in CFS, cubic feet per second. You have to use the calculations or the formulas to convert from CFS to acre feet or gallons, or whichever conversion chart. And that's why that number one question I asked was which conversion chart was used is important. It makes a difference on either underreporting or over-reporting flow. Anyway, so you see that Sacramento River had a lot of variables. We know that there was a lot of water in 2006, and yet it's less than 1998. That's going to be an important number. And I want to go over to 2010. Well, what really struck me when I saw this chart was that this number right at the bottom is delta outflow. That's how much going out of the delta into the Soon Bay and then the San Francisco Bay. And there's talk that it has to be a minimum of 10,000 cubic feet, or 10,000 cubic feet per second at a minimum to keep the salt water out of the delta. Well, these are acre feet or million acre feet, and so that has to get retranslated back to CFS to see how it impacts the delta. But what you can see is you look at how high the outflow was in 2000. They said all the computer modeling used 2000 as an average data year. CalSim called that an average water year. Thereafter, it was converted to above average water year. So now they're saying that 18 million acre feet outflow is an average water year, or above average water year. Look at the variables that start happening during the Cal-Fed study period. You see all these differences, and the flow is really changing. And we go along here, and then it gets really scary. Look at how low of outflow there is to Sassoon Marsh and the Bay. Look at this one. And it was these numbers here that made me think, well, wait a minute. If you have almost 13 million acre feet flowing on the Sacramento River, and then there's only 2.5 million acre feet of outflow, where'd the rest of the water go? There isn't that much in delta use when you count the water the farmers use and then they put water back out, and there's precipitation in the delta. So where did all of that water go? It just seemed like, they were saying exports was only 25% of the flow of the Sacramento River. Well, no, that's definitely not the case. So I looked at, okay, so here's what they said was 2000, the year 2000, 1,000 acre feet or million acre feet, and we can look at I think this is from the Delta Vision Group. Yeah, it says Delta Vision Group, and they say 2001 is average year, and then later on you'll find out it says it's above average. Anyway, it matches those numbers. So if you look at the numbers from the Delta Vision chart, it does match, and you can go back to mine and see those. So then took that chart and actually put all the numbers in Excel and actually put it in QuickBooks too. Treated those water flow numbers from all those years as if it was money instead of acre feet. And what I found was that the 2000 numbers matched. It made sense. But starting in about 2005, 2006, so I started finding that there was unaccounted for water. So I'm going to show you some of them. I'm going to have to make this smaller so we can run around this and not make you seasick. Just running around all these charts. This is the big poster, by the way, and you could print it out, or it's easier to look at it by running around in PDF online to understand all this. Anyway, so for 2010, just taking the numbers that Department of Water Resources had published in their final version of that 2013 water plan, that particular chart, there was actually 9 million acre feet of water that was not accounted for. They didn't account for it. Where'd that water go? In 2009, it wasn't as big a number. It was getting close to 1 million acre feet. Now you gotta understand how much that water is worth. That's billions of dollars value of water. So I put the unaccounted flow in red so you can see that. In 2006, that's 7 million, over 7 million acre feet, or 7,342,000 acre feet unaccounted for water flow. And let's see, that was 2006, 2007, look at that, 2008, I think one of these two I'm going to have to re-review because the pie chart doesn't look correct. And then I want to move over here, look at 2008. That shows a huge amount unaccounted for. It's just, so especially 2010, and so what are these numbers based on? So this is that chart. These are the numbers direct from the state, only put into an Excel spreadsheet. And also the state had kind of combined Contra Costa with in Delta and then recounted it again, had kind of changed around in that chart above, mixing up inflows and outflows, which was not really a logical way to report it. So I pulled it apart and used that chart, came up with the inflows, just exactly what the chart said. And the difference was that the exports, I use what they said, and then Delta outflow, I put that total exports, all the inflow minus exports came to Delta outflow reported. And you can see that this is 2010, 2009, 2008, 2007, 2006. These are the ones. You have to kind of estimate with water flow. That's what the engineers say. I do have a theory about the whole why does it have to be estimate when you can actually be much more accurate. But again, I'm not a water engineer. So anyway, I just want you to recognize unaccounted for flow in this for a lot of years from 2010 through 2005. So again, taking that same chart, using their numbers, and this is the unaccounted for flow. And so I figured out that when I added up all of that, and I valued it based on just exporting it at $150 an acre foot, which is what it goes to the Central Valley farmers at, I'm told, or right around that price. They turn around and sell it for much more. But the missing water is worth more than $3 billion. So if people were wondering what's paying for all these studies, that DWR and all that, well, maybe that water is going off somewhere and being sold to pay for a lot of this stuff. So now I want to go back to this same issue. Let me see if I can. Now I want to go to the update of this issue, because what happened was, now, sorry, I have to go back to my Water Wars page, and I want to go to the update of this particular issue, because it is updated. We're going to open this PDF. Hopefully it doesn't take forever to open. It may. What happened was this issue was brought to Department of Water Resources, And what was their response? I go to them, I ask the questions, and usually they just simply say, oh, that's interesting, and they do not answer. They do sometimes make corrections. When I ask the questions and they recognize, whoops, there might be a mistake here, they actually will make corrections. In this case, what they did with this unaccounted for water flow issue, I'm going to enlarge this one again so you can see it. Again, this is that same chart I showed you. And this is those same numbers that were incorrect. And exactly the same place, DWR changed the chart. It's the same place. They don't even recognize that they had to do a correction. They did this on March 19th, about the same time as the barriers issue on Steamboat Slough. That is where I brought some of these issues to, because how can they estimate what's going to happen if they take the waterway when they can't even correctly tell us how much water has flowed and has been exported? So I want you to notice, go to this if you're interested in this issue. And so they've changed this chart. And look at this delta outflow. I put this circle and I put the asterisks because I haven't had the time to re-input this. It was a huge amount of work to input it into QuickBooks and also an Excel spreadsheet and double check my own work. But this still doesn't make sense. It still doesn't make sense the way they did a couple of different things. And they also note corrections through 2004 here. And there's a whole nother story to that, and they don't note that down here, even though those corrections probably were made, because that's when 2001, I said 2000 was counted as an average water year, as I showed you on that Delta Vision chart, and now it's called a above average water year. They're saying 18 million acre feet is an above average water year. So the corrections do show on this. What doesn't make sense is where they come up with these numbers. No explanation whatsoever. They just change the chart. I do note something that I haven't seen before on these charts, and it says delta only without Sassoon Marsh. So what does that mean? Are they now counting the water swapping between the delta and Sassoon Marsh as delta inflow or outflow, or no explanation what that means? So all of this, hopefully I didn't go too long, this just shows you this is unaccounted for exports, and it's still really unaccounted for. There has been no explanation. There's absolutely a recognition by the state that they made a mistake on this published chart that people have relied on to do their calculations, that this chart was relied on for computer modeling for the Bay Delta Conservation Plan. These numbers were relied on for the Bay Delta Conservation Plan, and it was wrong. And now they've got what they say is a corrected chart, but they don't say how it was corrected. So one really, just on this issue alone, should be questioning the veracity of the water flow calculations and data on the Bay Delta Conservation Plan. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.